The dead don't drink champagne. Mave Sullivan knows this with the same certainty she knows the weight of her wedding ring in the jewelry box at home, the exact shade of her daughter's eyes, and the fact that her husband Elijah has been dead for 7 years. Yet there he sits in seat 3A, very much alive, swirling golden bubbles in a crystal flute. The plane's engines roar into sudden, deafening focus, then fade to nothing as blood rushes in her ears. The tray in her hands crashes against the beverage cart. It's him, not someone who resembles him. Him, the way his jaw tightens almost imperceptibly before he laughs. The birthmark just behind his left ear that she used to trace with her fingertip. Faith has inherited one in the exact same spot. The narrow aisle of the plane stretches impossibly long, reality warping as her brain rejects what her eyes insists is true. Mave, her colleague's voice seems to come from underwater. Helen. Her name is Helen, though right now Mave can barely remember her own name. Mave, you've gone pale. What's wrong? Her tongue feels swollen. What can she possibly say? That the love of her life, declared dead, is sitting in first class sipping Dom Perignon? Helen grips her elbow. Mave, you're scaring me. You're shaking like a leaf. She forces her gaze from Elijah. It can't be Elijah, but it is. Sweat breaks out along her hairline. She's hallucinated him before, glimpsed his profile in crowds, or caught his scent on passing strangers. In the early days of grief, she'd seen him everywhere, except it was never him. She takes a step forward as the man laughs. That laugh, richer than his speaking voice, rising from deep in his chest, always starting with a short intake of breath before it builds. The laugh that warmed their kitchen on Sunday mornings, that she felt vibrate against her lips when she kissed his throat. The laugh she thought their daughter would never know. "I have to serve him," she whispers, voice cracking. "What? No, you need to sit down before you collapse," Helen argues. Mave shakes her head, finding strange clarity in the chaos of her mind. "I need to see him up close. I need to kill him, kiss him, scream until my throat bleeds." Each step toward him feels like walking through quicksand. 7 years of crying herself to sleep. 7 years of working double shifts to make ends meet. 7 years of watching fate's eyes light up at every new photograph of her dead father. Why pretend to be dead? Why not just end things? This doesn't make any sense. Is Mave going crazy? The woman beside him notices her approach. "More champagne, please," she says, her tone carrying the expectation of someone who's never heard no in her life. And then he looks up. Those eyes, dear God, those eyes, deep amber brown with distinctive flecks of gold near the pupil. Eyes she stared into as they made love, as they fought, as they whispered promises that apparently meant nothing. Faith has those exact eyes. A wave of vertigo makes the cabin spin. "More champagne, sir," she manages, her voice dull as his gaze meets hers. It slides over her face with polite disinterest, no flicker of recognition, no heartbeat of shock mirroring her own. "Please," he says with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Then, with a wink, he adds, "Don't be stingy with the poor gorgeous." The blonde beside him laughs, her fingers tightening possessively on his arm. Something fractures inside Mave's chest. This casual flirtation from a man wearing her husband's face feels obscene, wrong in ways she can't put into words. She pours mechanically, the champagne trembling over the rim of his glass as the plane hits minor turbulence. Or perhaps it's just her hands. "Sorry," she manages, dabbing at the spill with a trembling napkin. "No harm done," Elijah says. Their fingertips brush as she hands him the glass. Does he really feel nothing? Not even the faintest echo of what they were? He doesn't. He's already turned away, attention back on the blonde, his head bent toward her, as though Mave is less than a ghost. The certainty that this is her husband collides with the impossibility of his behavior, and the dissonance is physically painful. She retreats on legs she can no longer feel, bile rising in her throat, bitter and burning. Her husband is dead. She identified his wrecked car. She planned his funeral. She spent 7 years trying to keep his memory alive for Faith. Yet here he sits, alive, day drinking with another woman. Mave barely makes it to the tiny airplane bathroom before her knees give way. Faith's face swims in her mind. Faith, who keeps Elijah's photo by her bed and kisses it goodnight. Faith, who just last week asked, if Daddy's watching over us from heaven, does he ever miss being able to hug us? Violent tremors rack her body as two irreconcilable truths wage war. Her husband is dead. Her husband is in seat 3A. If it's truly him, then everything has been built on lies. If it's not him, then she's finally broken under the weight of a death she never recovered from. Which is worse? Mave isn't sure. The plane lands with a jolt that Mave barely registers. She splashes cold water on her face, the shock bringing momentary clarity. She needs answers, needs them like drowning lungs need air, needs them for Faith, who deserves to know if her father is still alive. When she emerges, Helen takes one look at her face and whispers, "What happened? Everyone deplaned." "You know you're not supposed to stay in the bathroom while we land." Mave fixes her gaze on seat 3A, now empty. Her hands have stopped shaking. The initial shock has hardened into something colder, sharper. "That man," she says, her voice low and dangerous even to her own ears. "The one that was sitting there, I need his name, his information, everything." Helen follows her gaze, confusion etched across her features. Why? Did he do something inappropriate? Mave replies, "Either I've completely lost my mind, or my dead husband faked his own death. So yes, pretty inappropriate." Helen's eyebrows shoot up alarmingly high. "Mave, what are you talking about?" God, she sounds insane. Mave realizes this as she meets Helen's confused gaze. People don't come back from the dead. Except Elijah, apparently. "Can you help me or not?" she insists. "That's against policy, you know that," Helen says. "Please." The word comes out raw, stripped of dignity. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." Helen studies her for a long moment. "I'll see what I can find out, but you need to get off this plane before the cleaning crew arrives. Wait for me in the first-class lounge." Mave nods, grateful. "Thank you." The terminal buzzes with afternoon activity as she walks away from the plane on wobbly legs. A part of her yearns to run after Elijah right this instant. The other insists she needs proof, confirmation, before she, confronts a man who looked at her like a stranger? He hadn't recognized her, not in the least. If Mave had one certainty, it was this. The staff entrance to the lounge requires her ID badge. Inside, the hushed atmosphere and muted lighting provide blessed relief from the sensory overload of the terminal. She needs to call Alan. Alan was there the night of the accident. Alan identified the body. Alan will tell her she's losing her mind. And maybe, maybe that would be a relief compared to the alternative. She moves to the bank of phones along the back wall, away from curious eyes. He picks up on the third ring. "Hello, it's me," she says, voice breaking despite her efforts. "Mave, what's wrong? Is Faith okay?" Alan asks, immediate concern filling his voice. "She's fine." Mave presses her forehead against the cool wall beside the phone. "Look, Alan, I don't know how to tell you this, but Mave, you're scaring me. Where are you?" Chicago, layover. She draws a ragged breath. Listen to me, Hallen. I saw Elijah. A long silence stretches too long. Did you hear me? Mave insists. I heard you, Alan finally replies. His voice has changed, grown careful. What? What do you mean you saw Elijah on your flight? First class? The words tumble out frantic. It was him, Alan. His eyes, his laugh, everything. Another pause. Mave, Alan hesitates. She thinks she hears him wet his lips. Elijah is dead, he says eventually, casually. You know that. Mave fights the urge to slam the phone down. I know what I saw, she insists. I served him champagne. I was inches from his face. And what did he say? Alan's tone sharpens slightly. This makes Mave freeze. Nothing, she admits. The admission feels like swallowing glass. He didn't know me at all. All right, look, Mave, Alan says, the sound crackling through the connection. You're working too hard. How much sleep did you get last night? The night before? When was the last time you took a real break? This isn't about sleep, Alan, she snaps. Remember that trip we talked about taking Faith to Disneyland? Maybe it's time. She slumps against the wall, suddenly bone-tired. I know what I saw, she repeats, but doubt creeps in. This is the man I love, Alan, she says, before catching herself. Loved, she corrects. You really think I wouldn't recognize him? But deep down, doubt creeps in. What if Alan is right? Maybe the long hours, the constant travel, the stress of single motherhood have finally cracked something inside her. Mave, Alan sighs. Remember last year when you thought you heard him calling your name in that restaurant? This was different, Mave snaps. Look, Alan, all I'm saying is, are you sure it was him? She insists, feeling dizzy. That night, the body you identified. Are you sure, Mave? Alan scolds gently. Come on. Are you sure, Alan? The line goes staticky with his hesitation. The crash was bad, Mave. The injuries were significant. But yes, I'm sure. His father was there too. She squeezes her eyes shut. She hadn't viewed the body herself. Couldn't bear to see him that way. Broken and still. She'd trusted Alan and Samuel West to handle the identification, the arrangements. Of course, she murmurs. I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Don't apologize, Alan says quickly. Just take care of yourself, okay? For Faith's sake, if not your own. Faith. The thought of her daughter centers her as it always does. You're right, she concedes. I think I'm just exhausted. Too many flights back to back. That's probably it, Alan says, relief evident in his voice. Call me when you get home, okay? I'll come over. We can talk more. Okay, thanks, Alan. She hangs up, the plastic receiver slipping from suddenly nerveless fingers. She's losing her mind. That has to be it. The grief counselor had warned her about this, how the mind can sometimes reject loss so completely that it creates elaborate scenarios of reunion. Elijah is gone. She's accepted that most days, but sometimes, like today, the wound feels as fresh as it did 5 years ago. She's accepted his death, but she's not over it, not over him, and sometimes it feels like she never will be. She should get back to the plane. She's halfway to the door when Helen rushes in, slightly out of breath. There you are, she says, approaching with a folded paper in hand. I checked the manifest like you asked. Mave shakes her head. It's okay. I just talked to a friend. I think I'm having some kind of stress reaction. Helen's expression shifts. Right. Well, the guy's name is Elijah Xavier West. Mave freezes. What? She whispers. The floor seems to drop from beneath her feet. That's her husband's name. Not similar, not close, exact. Let me see, she whispers, cold reality crashing back in waves. Helen hands over the paper, concern evident in her furrowed brow. He's headed to some fancy hotel downtown, according to his booking details. She explains, though Mave barely listens. She convinced herself she was hallucinating, that her grief-stricken mind had conjured a ghost. But hallucinations don't book first-class tickets under real names, and they certainly don't reserve rooms at luxurious hotels. Helen, she says, her voice sounding foreign to her own ears, I need you to cover for me with the captain. Tell him I got sick, food poisoning or something. What? But we have a turnaround in 70 minutes. I know, and I'm sorry. Mave clenches her fists, but I need to find him. Helen's gaze sharpens. What are you planning to do? I don't know. Get answers. Determination hardens her tone. Faith deserves answers. She's a good kid, Helen says with a small smile. She is. Mave agrees, a strangled laugh escaping her lips. She's also currently convinced my best friend isn't human. What? Helen blinks. Mave waves a dismissive hand. Nothing, just a phase she's going through. She thinks my friend Alan turns into a wolf at night. I have to go now, Mave says, feeling the conversation veering off track. Will you cover for me? Helen hesitates, then nods. All right, she squeezes Mave's arm. Go, I'll handle the captain. Mave gives a quick nod and hurries from the lounge, purpose propelling her forward. The hotel information on the manifest shows where her husband is headed. She'll start there. She'll find him. She'll get answers. Because if Elijah Xavier West is alive, then everything else is a lie, and she's going to uncover why. The taxi costs more than Mave's monthly car payment. She doesn't care. Money, job security, rational thinking, all of it has been consumed by the impossible truth blazing through her veins. Her husband is alive. Rain lashes against the cab's windows as it pulls up to a sleek complex of glass and stone, the kind of place that charges extra just for existing within its rarefied atmosphere, the kind of place Elijah always favored, his tastes molded by a lifetime of West family privilege. Mave pays the driver, her mind replaying that moment on the plane in an endless loop, the casual wink, the lack of recognition, the emptiness that followed. It can't be him. Elijah loved her. She knows that. She's never doubted that. But then, why act like he'd never seen her before? The lobby gleams with polished marble and soft lighting. A massive stone fireplace crackles at its center, surrounded by sleek leather seating where well-dressed guests sip colorful cocktails. Mave approaches the reception desk, suddenly aware of her rumpled flight attendant uniform and the wild look in her eyes. Good evening, the receptionist greets her, her name tag reading Amber. Do you have a reservation with us? No, Mave swallows. Now that she's here, the words feel absurd. I need to see one of your guests, Elijah West. Amber's smile doesn't falter, but professional caution flickers in her eyes. I'm sorry, but we don't provide information about our guests. Mave leans forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Could you at least call his room? Tell him M. Sullivan is here. The receptionist's smile remains intact, though her tone sharpens slightly. I'm afraid not. Desperation tightens in Mave's chest. She fumbles through her wallet and retrieves a worn photograph, her hands trembling as she places it on the counter. This is him, she says. Have you seen him today? The photo captures Elijah on their last anniversary, his head thrown back in laughter as Mave surprises him with a kiss on the cheek. Amber glances at the photo, her expression cautious. Ma'am, I really can't. Please, Mave pleads, her voice cracking under the weight of raw emotion. He's my husband. Something in her tone makes Amber pause, but before she can respond, a sharp voice cuts through the lobby. Mave turns, and time seems to freeze. Elijah stands near the elevators, checking his watch. He's changed since the flight, now dressed in dark jeans and a gray cashmere sweater. The blonde who had been with him earlier is nowhere to be seen. "That's him," Mave whispers, more to herself than to Amber. She snatches the photo back, shoving it into her pocket as she moves across the lobby like a ghost. The distance between her and the man she thought was gone forever feels both infinite and non-existent. Stopping just behind him, close enough to catch the faint scent of his cologne, she says his name, Elijah. Her voice is steadier than she feels. He turns, his brow furrowed in mild confusion. "Yes?" His eyes scan her face, and for one fleeting moment, Mave thinks she sees recognition flicker in them. "We need to talk," she manages, though she hadn't planned for this moment, hadn't prepared what to say when standing face to face with the man she buried 7 years ago. His expression shifts to mild surprise. "Oh," he says, recognition dawning. "It's you." The flight attendant from the plane. Relief surges within her, only to vanish just as quickly, leaving her hollow. "The flight attendant?" she repeats flatly. "That's it? That's all you remember?" Elijah blinks at her. "I'm sorry, was there something else I should know?" From behind them, Amber approaches cautiously. "Mr. West, is everything all right?" "I think so," Elijah replies absently, his gaze still fixed on Mave. "Is this woman bothering you?" Amber presses, shooting Mave a pointed look. "What do you mean, bothering him?" Mave erupts. "He pretended to be dead for 7 years, and I'm the one bothering him?" Amber's eyes widen. "I'll call security," she says, already turning toward her desk. "Whoa, hold on," Elijah interjects, raising a hand. "What do you mean, pretended to be dead?" "I haven't been pretending anything. I've just been walking around like a very alive person." His flippant response ignites something deep within Mave. This is so quintessentially Elijah, the bratty, smart-ass tone that always surfaced when he felt cornered. It's one of the many behaviors she'd cataloged over the years, remnants of the privileged life he led before everything fell apart. Like how he'd overtip for the slightest service flaw, or his barely hidden shock when he first saw her tiny apartment with its secondhand furniture, as if such living conditions were purely theoretical until that moment. "This is cozy," he'd said, attempting diplomacy as he surveyed her tiny studio. "You mean small," she'd replied. "I mean efficient," he'd corrected, "like a submarine." She'd thrown a pillow at him, and he'd caught it with ease, laughing. "What? It's a compliment. I like submarines. Very nautical." The memory crashes against the present. This is him. This is undeniably, unquestionably Elijah, from the arch of his eyebrow to the way he stands with his weight balanced slightly on his right foot. "Where were you?" she demands, her voice breaking. "How could you do this to me?" "Do what?" he asks, baffled. "And I've been plenty of places. You'd have to be more specific." Before she can think, Maeve's palm connects with his cheek in a sharp crack that echoes through the lobby. Pain immediately radiates up her arm. It's like slapping marble, but Elijah barely flinches. Only his eyes react, flashing momentarily from brown to a luminous gold as his pupils dilate. A split-second tell, gone almost before it appears, but Mave catches it. His eyes used to do that. She's never met anybody else with eyes that could do that, and she realizes with sudden clarity he never wanted to talk about it, changing topics whenever she mentioned his strange golden eyes. He'd been loving, charming, warm, but secretive too. Somehow, her grief had conveniently made her forget about that these past 7 years, that he'd been secretive. But now she wonders, what had he been hiding from her? I have no idea who you are, Elijah says, his voice lower now. You must have me confused with someone else. Confused? Mave laughs. You think I wouldn't recognize my own husband? Several guests turn to stare. Amber and another staff member exchange wide-eyed glances, caught between protocol and fascination with the unfolding drama. You think I wouldn't know if I'd gotten married? Elijah counters, incredulity creeping into his tone. Mave wants to shake him. You're Elijah Xavier West, she begins. Yes, thank you, I know who I am, he interrupts. Son of Samuel and Guyana West, she continues undeterred, born May 17, 1960. Takes your coffee black, except on Sundays when you inexplicably want cream. You have a birthmark shaped like a butterfly on your lower back, which you call your Blate stamp. Elijah stares at her, the color draining from his face. You hate cilantro and claim it tastes like soap. You sleep with the window open, even in winter. You fold your socks instead of rolling them. And when you're startled, she adds, your eyes flash gold like they did when I slapped you. Around them, the lobby has gone silent, spectators riveted by the unfolding scene. You never did explain that, Mave presses, sensing a crack in his facade. Just like you never explained why you avoid doctors or possess an extraordinary metabolism. Why do injuries that should take weeks to heal vanish overnight? Or how can you drink an entire bottle of scotch without even slurring your words? Elijah becomes completely still, a predator stillness that contrasts sharply with the charming facade he shows the world. Give us a minute, he says, turning to Amber. Sir, she protests, I should call. It's fine, he cuts her off. Thank you, Amber. He grasps Mave's elbow, his grip firm but not painful, and guides her toward a secluded alcove behind the fireplace. Once they're alone, he releases her, maintaining a careful distance. Who are you? He asks, all pretense gone. The question shatters something inside her. She almost expects to hear it snap. You're really going to pretend not to know who I am? Her voice is barely audible. For a moment, uncertainty flickers across his face before his expression hardens. My name is Mave, she murmurs. He shows no reaction. Have you been stalking me? He asks in a low, menacing tone. The absurdity of the question makes Mave laugh, a sharp, humorless sound. Stalking you? I buried you, she cries. I scattered your ashes across the sea. I've spent 7 years explaining to our daughter why her daddy isn't coming home. Our daughter? Elijah repeats, unimpressed. Now we have a daughter. Faith, Mave says. She just turned 7 last month. Elijah shakes his head, and she sees it then, as if watching an old film, the memory of telling him she was pregnant. His face had gone pale, panic flashing in his eyes. Pregnant? He'd echoed, his voice hollow. But you're on the pill. It's not infallible, she'd argued, startled by his reaction. She'd expected surprise, maybe nerves, but not shock so visceral it felt like a catastrophe. He'd paced their apartment for over an hour, running his hands through his hair until it stood on end. Finally, he spoke, his voice strangely flat. Excuse me, she'd whispered, stunned. Mave, please. The look he gave her, desperate and raw, sent a chill down her spine. You have to trust me on this, he'd insisted. The fight that followed was their worst ever. She stormed out, spending the night at a friend's. When she returned the next day, determined to talk rationally, he was waiting with flowers and an apology. He admitted he'd panicked, promised he was sorry, assured her they could make it work. But something had shifted. The easy confidence in his eyes was replaced by a haunted vigilance she couldn't explain. Suddenly, he wouldn't leave her side, his gaze following her everywhere. Always wary, always tense, as if bracing for some unseen danger. "I'm pregnant, not dying," she quipped once when he'd insisted on carrying her up a small flight of stairs. He hadn't laughed. Instead, his expression crumbled, and he looked as though he might cry. The memory cuts deep. Was that why he'd left? Because of this pregnancy he irrationally feared? Yes, Mave thinks, it has to be. "You left because of faith," she accuses, the words bitter in her mouth. "You said you were okay with it, but you weren't, were you?" "I don't know you," Elijah insists, but there's something different in his tone now, cautious. 2 security guards appear behind him, summoned by Amber despite his instructions. "Sir, is there a problem here?" "Yes," Mave says before Elijah can answer. "This jackass abandoned his family, and now he's pretending not to even know us." "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises," the taller guard says firmly. "Oh, whatever," she snaps, yanking her arm away when he reaches for her. "Not like I want to be here anyway, not anymore." She's confused, Elijah tells the guards, his voice measured. She needs help, a doctor maybe. "I'm not confused," Mave spits, anger flaring hot and bright. Forget the tears, forget the shock. She's incandescent with rage. "You're a coward, Elijah, and you know what? I'm actually glad you stayed away from my daughter. She deserves better than that." Mave fumbles in her wallet, pulling out the photo of Faith she always carries, the school portrait taken 3 months ago, her smile revealing a missing front tooth. "She looks just like you," Mave says, throwing the photo at him. "In case you ever wondered, now you won't have to come see for yourself." She turns and walks away, her spine rigid despite the storm raging inside her. Elijah doesn't move for several minutes after she storms out. The lobby swirls around him with nervous energy, guests stealing glances, staff whispering. He hears every word with crystal clarity, his enhanced senses picking up fragments of speculation and concern. The photograph in his hand feels heavier than it should. A small girl with dark hair and unmistakable features stares back at him. She has his eyes and his mother's dimples. The resemblance is undeniable, yet impossible to reconcile with the blank space in his memory where this woman should exist. "Mr. West," Amber approaches cautiously. "Are you all right? Should I call someone?" He looks up, noting how her pulse quickens when their eyes meet, an automatic response he's grown accustomed to. Humans react to a predator's presence, whether they understand what they're sensing or not. "I'm fine," he says, his voice carrying just enough authority to end further questions. "Thank you for handling that so professionally." She flushes with pleasure at the praise. "Of course, sir. Will you be needing anything else tonight?" "Privacy," he says simply, and she retreats without another word. Elijah steps out of the elevator and into his suite on the 12th floor, his thoughts racing. The scent of the woman lingers in his mind, floral and warm, beneath the sterile notes of airline perfume, mingled with determination and a trace of barely restrained panic. His wolf had stirred the moment she approached him. She was undeniably attractive, tall, athletic, with striking features, and an assertiveness uncommon among humans who encounter him. Even in her fury and disarray, there was something magnetic about her presence. Inside, Elijah loosens his tie and pours himself a generous measure of scotch from the well-stocked bar. Alcohol helps quiet the restless energy of his wolf, allowing him to think more clearly. His gaze drifts back to the photograph. He can't stop looking at it. The child, Faith, as Mave called her, bears a resemblance to him. Could she be his? But resemblance alone doesn't prove paternity, and he has no memory of the woman claiming to be her mother. Perhaps it was a fleeting encounter he'd forgotten. An attractive woman matching his type, her scent lingering, but that didn't align with her claim. She said they were married. The details she provided about his habits, quirks, and family hit too close to home, unsettlingly accurate. Setting the photo aside, Elijah begins pacing. His heightened hearing picks up fragments of neighboring conversations, the distant hum of traffic below. What troubles him most isn't just her story, it's what it represents. If she's telling the truth, she's human, completely, unmistakably human. And Elijah does not involve himself with humans, not casually, not seriously, and certainly not through marriage. The risks are catastrophic. Human women cannot endure bearing shifter children. The pregnancies are often fatal. Even if they survive childbirth, a rarity, they cannot raise a shifter child safely. One accidental bite during the child's first shift could kill them. Shifter children need pack structure, guidance from their own kind. Worse still, the shifter gene is dominant. If Faith truly is his daughter, the likelihood of her being a shifter is alarmingly high. Elijah wouldn't expose someone to such dangers knowingly. He wouldn't father a child with a human, only to abandon her to face this peril alone. Yet here lies a photograph of a girl who looks eerily like him, reportedly raised by a human woman who claims he left her. Picking up the photo again, Elijah studies the little girl's face. If she is indeed his, if there's any chance a human woman is raising a shifter child, both mother and daughter could be in grave danger. When shifter children reach 7 or 8, their wolf begins to stir. Without proper understanding or support, their first shift can turn violent, deadly, not only for the child, but for anyone nearby. The thought sends his wolf pacing anxiously beneath his skin. Reaching for his phone, Elijah dials Nicole's extension. "I need you to look into someone," he says abruptly. "The flight attendant from earlier, she said her name was Mave," Nicole replies. "The woman who accosted you in the lobby? Sir, she was clearly delusional." He cuts her off. "Just find her. I need to know where she lives, where she works, everything you can dig up." Nicole hesitates. "May I ask why?" He holds up a photograph, his gaze fixed on the child's face. "She had this picture, a little girl who might be mine." Silence stretches between them. Nicole, his assistant for 3 years and his father's before that, understands the gravity of the situation. "I'll get right on it," she says finally. Elijah stares at the photo, the little girl's grin tugging at something deep within him. If she's his, if she's been growing up without knowing her father exists, it gnaws at him. He paces, his wolf restless beneath the surface. The name Faith echoes in his mind like a half-forgotten memory. 2 days later, Elijah finds himself standing across the street from an elementary school as children pour out in a chaotic wave. Nicole had uncovered the details quickly. Mave Sullivan, 31, a flight attendant for 4 years after working various service jobs in New York. She has a 7-year-old daughter named Faith, born in October 1991. No father listed on the birth certificate. The efficiency of Nicole's work unsettled him, but he'd long since stopped caring about propriety when it came to Faith. His hands tremble. What if she really is his daughter? What if she's not? What if approaching her traumatizes a child who thinks her father is dead? Or worse, what if walking away means abandoning his own flesh and blood? The school bell rings, sharp and final, and his heightened hearing picks up the excited chatter of children spilling into the courtyard. His wolf stirs restlessly beneath his skin, mirroring his anxiety with a primal urge to move, to act. Then Faith emerges from the main doors. She gestures animatedly as she talks to her friends, drawing them into whatever story she's weaving with natural charisma. Leadership qualities, his wolf observes, with what feels disturbingly like pride. Elijah moves closer, staying behind the chain-link fence separating the school property from the street. He tells himself he just needs to see her clearly, to confirm what his heart already suspects. The mingling scents of dozens of children fill the air, making it hard to isolate individual smells, but he's patient. Tracking comes naturally to him. He's done it since he was old enough to shift. Faith breaks away from the group, chasing after a ball that's rolled toward the fence. As she nears, the wind shifts, carrying her scent directly to him. Recognition hits with devastating certainty. It's unmistakably his bloodline, the same base scent that marks all the Wests, like cedar and something wild yet clean. There's no mistaking it, no room for doubt. This child carries his genetics as surely as if she'd been born with his name etched into her very being. She's his, absolutely, undeniably his. But she is also completely, purely human. No wolf, no trace of any supernatural ability. Elijah frowns. Shifter genes are dominant, overwhelmingly so. A shifter father and a human mother should produce a shifter child nearly every time. Yet here she is, his daughter, human. It defies everything he knows about the fundamental nature of what he is. But his nose doesn't lie, and neither does the recognition burning in his chest like a brand. Faith is his daughter, who somehow, by some miracle he can't comprehend, escaped the burden of his nature. The relief that crashes over him is so intense, it nearly brings him to his knees. She's safe. She'll never have to worry about losing control. She'll never face the choice between her human world and her wolf. She's just a normal human child. His normal human child. He takes a step toward the fence before he can stop himself. She's right there, so close he could call her name. But then reality crashes back. What would he say? How do you explain to a 7-year-old that her world isn't what she thought it was? And more importantly, what place does he have in her life? She's human. His world is dangerous for humans. Even if Mave would allow contact, what could he offer Faith except confusion and instability? Maybe the kindest thing he can do is walk away and let her live her normal human life. The decision sits heavy in his chest, but he forces himself to turn away from the fence. He's taken 3 steps toward his car when he hears it. Daddy! The word stops him cold. He turns slowly, hardly daring to breathe. Faith stands pressed against the chain-link fence, her small hands wrapped around the metal links. Her eyes, his eyes, are wide with recognition and something that looks like wonder. Daddy? She asks again, her voice full of hope. The words hit like a punch. Emmy starts to speak, then stops. "It is you," the child says, her voice rising with excitement. "I knew it. I told Mommy I saw you in my dreams, but she said you were in heaven." She begins climbing the fence with the fearless determination only children possess. Several adults near the school entrance notice the commotion and call out for someone to get the child down before she hurts herself. I should leave, Elijah thinks desperately. I should walk away before this gets worse. But Faith is calling for him now, her voice carrying across the playground as she struggles desperately with the fence. "Daddy, it's me, Faith!" The anguish in her voice tears at him. She's so small, so determined, so utterly convinced that he belongs to her. A teacher tries to coax her down from the fence, but Faith refuses to budge. "That's my daddy," she insists, pointing at Elijah with one tiny hand while gripping the fence with the other. The teacher follows her finger, and Elijah realizes he's been spotted. Half the school staff is staring now, And if he doesn't act soon, someone will call the police. But Faith makes the decision for him. With a final, determined effort, she scrambles over the fence and drops to the ground on his side. "Daddy!" she cries, launching herself into his arms without hesitation. Pure instinct makes him catch her. She clings to him, wrapping her arms around his neck and burying her face against his shoulder. Every protective instinct he never knew he had roars to life. "Mine," his wolf declares fiercely. She's so small in his arms, so warm and trusting, so certain she belongs there. "I knew you weren't really dead," she whispers against his ear. "I told Mommy you were coming back, but she didn't believe me." Elijah closes his eyes, holding her tighter as his entire world shifts around this moment. "I'm here," he manages, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm here now." As Elijah struggles to process the surreal reality of holding his human daughter, another familiar scent drifts to him on the breeze. His body stiffens with recognition even before he sees her. Mave rounds the corner of the school building, her face a mask of panic that hardens into fury the moment she spots him holding Faith. "What do you think you're doing?" she demands, striding toward them. "Put her down, now!" The command in her voice makes his wolf bristle, but Elijah forces himself to stay calm. Faith, still cradled in his arms, turns to her mother with wide, bright eyes. "Mommy, look! Daddy came back!" Maeve's face goes pale, then flushes red. "That is not your father," she says firmly, reaching for Faith. "Come here, baby." Faith hesitates, torn between her parents. "But Mom—" "No, Faith," Mave interrupts, her tone brooking no argument. Reluctantly, Faith allows herself to be transferred from Elijah's arms to her mother's, but she keeps glancing back at him, confusion and hurt written all over her face. "This isn't your daddy," Mave tells her gently, though her voice remains strained as she fixes Elijah with a glare sharp enough to cut steel. "He's just someone who looks like the pictures." The dismissal stings more than it should. Elijah takes a step forward, his protective instincts flaring. "You said she was mine," he says quietly. "I couldn't just leave her here, not knowing." "And why not?" Mave snaps, her voice rising. "That's exactly what you've been doing for the past 7 years, isn't it?" "I didn't know about her," Elijah fires back bluntly. "How could I? You never reached out." "Because I thought you were dead," Mave retorts, her words startling Faith in her arms. "You're scaring my daughter," Elijah snaps, reaching out instinctively. The words strike a nerve. Mave's face flushes with anger as she shifts Faith higher on her hip in a purely protective gesture. "Your daughter?" she repeats, her voice laced with danger. "Just 2 days ago, you wouldn't even believe she existed, and now she's your daughter? Have you lost your mind?" Elisha grimaces. "Look, I'm sorry, but like I told you at the hotel, I have no memory of you, and it doesn't help that you've made up this entire relationship we never had." Maeve's jaw drops. "I haven't made up anything," she spits, her tone sharp and bitter. "You were declared dead. If you don't believe me, ask your father." She frowns then, suddenly appearing troubled, though not as troubled as Elijah feels. "My father?" he echoes, confusion clouding his thoughts. As he looks at Mave now, really looks at her, he understands why his wolf responded to her so strongly. She's magnificent in her anger, all fierce protectiveness and barely contained fury. But that only deepens the mystery. If they'd shared some fleeting encounter, why can't he remember her? Before he can respond, she turns away, Faith still cradled in her arms. "Stay away from us," she throws over her shoulder. "I mean it." His wolf snarls at the thought of being separated from his daughter, but Elijah forces himself to stay still. He can't just take Faith, not when Mave is her mother and clearly loves the child fiercely. But he isn't giving up. Faith is his daughter, and he has rights too, even if he can't recall how he earned them. He watches Mave stride across the playground, Faith's arms wrapped tightly around her neck. "I'll figure this out," he promises silently. "I'll find a way to be part of your life." As he considers his options, private investigators, legal counsel, gradual approaches through neutral parties, a familiar scent drifts on the wind. Another shifter. Elijah's head snaps up, scanning the area with predatory focus. Across the parking lot stands a man in his mid-30s, sandy blonde hair, athletic build, exuding the kind of clean-cut appearance that puts humans at ease while masking the predator beneath. Elijah frowns, confused. It's Alan, his childhood friend and pack brother. But why is he here? Elijah hasn't called him, hasn't spoken to him since their brief conversation about territory disputes last week. Maybe Nicole told him. Grateful for familiar support, Elijah raises his hand to wave Alan over. But then he realizes something odd. Alan isn't looking his way. In fact, Alan doesn't seem to notice him at all. Instead, he's walking straight toward Mave. Mave, who greets Alan with easy familiarity. Mave, who allows him to hug her, and not just a polite hug, but one filled with warmth and comfort. Worse yet, Alan leans in to greet Faith with the casual affection of someone who's done this countless times before. Elijah's stomach churns as realization dawns. Alan knows them, but how? And more importantly, how does he know them without realizing Faith belongs to his own alpha's bloodline? Unless he already knows. Elijah suddenly understands. Alan knows exactly whose daughter Faith is, and he hasn't said a word to Elijah. As Mave helps Faith into the car, Elijah takes a step toward them. His childhood friend knows his daughter, knows Mave, and still hasn't spoken up. He starts walking faster. That's when Alan sees him. His head turns, eyes locking with Elijah's, before he hurriedly climbs into the car and starts the engine with panicked urgency. "Wait!" Elijah yells, breaking into a run. Faith notices, pressing her face to the rear window. She waves at him, confusion clear on her small features. Mave just shakes her head and gives him the finger. Then Alan speeds off at an impossible speed, tires squealing as he drives away under Elijah's startled gaze. "See?" Mave barks as Alan races through residential streets at dangerous speeds. "I told you it was him." But Alan hadn't seemed shocked to see Elijah alive, at least not in the past 2 days, ever since their confrontation at the hotel. He'd insisted it was all coincidence, grief playing tricks on her mind. He'd sounded so reasonable, so convincing, that she almost started believing him again. Almost. But back at the school, Alan didn't look surprised to see Elijah. He looked like a man caught in a lie. "You were scared," she continues, her voice growing stronger with certainty. "You saw him, and you ran because you knew he was alive." "Mave," Alan starts, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "No," she cuts him off. You knew it was really him, didn't you?" Alan's jaw works silently, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. In the back seat, Faith hums quietly to herself. "You don't understand," Alan finally says, his voice strained. "Stop the car, Alan, right now." "Mave, listen to me." "Stop the goddamn car." Alan jerks the wheel to the right, pulling into an empty parking lot with a screech of tires. He puts the car in park, but doesn't turn off the engine, his breathing harsh in the sudden silence. "Yes," he says finally, the word dropping like a stone into still water. "I lied, but it was for your own good, Mave. For Faith's good." "For my own good?" Her voice cracks. Alan, I mourned him. I've been raising his daughter alone, thinking he was dead. And you? She stops, emotion choking off her words. I know. His voice is barely above a whisper. I know what it cost you. Then why? The question comes out raw, desperate. Why would you do that to me? To Faith? She stares at his profile, at the man who's been her anchor for 7 years, the man who held her while she cried on the anniversary of Elijah's death, the man she trusted more than anyone else in the world, the man who's been lying to her face for years. I can explain, he says, finally turning to meet her eyes. But not here, not with, he glances back at Faith, who's still humming and playing with a small toy. Can we drop her off at your mother's first, please? The request sends fresh alarm through her. The drive to her mother's house is tense and silent, broken only by Faith's chatter about her day and excitement about seeing Daddy at school. Mave's mother, bless her, takes one look at Mave's face and agrees to keep Faith for the evening without asking questions. Back in the car, the silence feels suffocating. My place, Mave says, when Alan hesitates at the end of her mother's driveway. And then you're going to tell me everything, or I swear to God, Alan, I will never speak to you again. The threat hangs between them like a sword. Alan's been part of her life for so long that the idea of cutting him out feels like threatening to amputate a limb. But the betrayal burns in her chest, mixing with confusion and a growing sense that nothing in her life is what she thought it was. Her place feels too small when they walk in. The familiar space somehow changed by the weight of whatever Alan is about to tell her. Talk, Mave demands. Alan runs his hands through his hair. Elijah isn't who you think he is, he says finally. He put you in terrible danger, Mave. Both of you. What are you talking about? How? It wouldn't make sense if I just explained it, Alan says, his voice strained. I'd need to show you. Show me what? Mave asks, backing away from him. Please, he says, moving toward her with his hands raised like he's approaching a spooked animal. Just wait until I can make you understand. It will all make sense then. What's going on? She asks, the question directed more at herself than at him. I don't know what to believe anymore. You can trust me, Alan says quietly. You always have. That hasn't changed. But it has changed. The foundation of their friendship, built on shared grief and his steadfast support, has been revealed as a lie. How can she trust anything else? He says, still, he's Alan. Then tell me, she says, her voice barely steady. Alan starts unbuttoning his shirt. What are you doing? Mave takes another step back, alarm flaring. Trust me, he says, pulling the shirt over his head. I need you to see this. Alan, stop. But he's already reaching for his belt, stripping out of his clothes with efficient movements. What the hell are you? Look at me, he says, now completely naked and seemingly unconcerned by her shock. Look me in the eyes, Mave. She wants to look away, wants to demand he put his clothes back on and explain himself like a rational person. But there's something in his voice, something desperate and urgent that keeps her frozen in place. Just watch, he says, and try not to scream. The change starts in his eyes. Then his face begins to elongate, his jaw pushing forward as his teeth sharpen into fangs. Mave's brain refuses to process what she's seeing. This is impossible. People don't just... Alan drops to his hands and knees as his spine arches and stretches. Fur erupts across his skin in a wave of sandy brown and gray. His limbs reshape with wet organic sounds that churn her stomach. In moments where Alan once knelt, a massive wolf now crouches. Elijah's hands tremble as he dials his father's private number on an oversized cell phone, one of the new Motorola models. It feels like a brick against his ear, but answers matter more than convenience right now. Samuel West, his father's voice cuts through the speaker, crisp and commanding as ever. "It's me," Elijah says without preamble. "We need to talk." "Elijah, where the hell are you? You were supposed to be at the Hargrove funeral an hour ago. The pack is asking questions." "Forget the funeral," Elijah snaps. "I want to know why Alan is hanging around a human woman who claims I'm supposed to be dead." The silence on the other end stretches so long that Elijah wonders if the call has dropped. "How did you find out?" his father asks finally. Elijah gapes. "You knew," he murmurs. "You knew, son." Don't you dare," Elijah interrupts. "I ran into her by accident. She was shocked to see me alive." Another sigh. "So, you saw Mave then?" "You know her?" Elijah's grip tightens on the phone. "No thanks to you," Samuel replies, his tone hardening. "You never bothered to introduce us properly." Elijah's mind races. "She knew things about me, intimate things. She claimed we were married." "It's true," Samuel admits. "You were married in secret, against pack law and my explicit orders." "What?" The word comes out strangled. "How could you not tell me that?" "How could I not tell you?" Samuel's voice rises. "How could you not tell me you were dating a human woman? You knew I'd forbid it." "I can do what I want," Elijah shoots back, feeling defensive despite not remembering Mave or their relationship. "Your pack above all, boy," Samuel roars. "And I'm your alpha. You broke pack law. His father's voice softens, though bitterness lingers. "Dating a human? Marrying her in secret? How could you?" Elijah staggers backward. "I told you if you went through with it, I'd banish you from the pack and never allow you back. You'd get nothing, no inheritance, no family fortune, no protection, nothing. And you went and did it anyway." Samuel's voice turns bitter. "You left us, the pack, your mother, all for this girl." Elijah's mind reels. The pack, being an heir, the family fortune. That's his entire identity. Everything he's ever known about himself. If he'd been willing to give up everything for Mave, willing to defy his father, I must have really loved her, he thinks. Elijah's chest tightens with a pain he doesn't understand. Somewhere in his missing memories lies a love so powerful it made him choose a human woman over everything he'd ever known. And it's gone, stolen from him as surely as if someone had cut out a piece of his heart. "Father," Elijah says, his voice hollow with grief for something he can't remember losing. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened because I don't remember any of this." "I don't know," his father admits. "There was a car accident. Alan was with you. He found you and rescued you. You were physically fine, but somehow all your memories of her were gone. So you chose not to tell me about Mave?" Elijah feels the betrayal cut deep. "It was like a miracle," his father says, his voice gaining strength. "It was as if you'd never met her. You remembered everything else, pack events, business deals, birthdays, conversations from 6 months ago, the day before, all except her. But that makes no sense. Elijah knows he's a shifter. Even after an accident severe enough to cause memory loss, he should have recovered by now." Samuel continues, saying he thought you'd remember eventually. "In fact, we were certain of it. But I thought if you came back to us, to the pack in the meantime, you'd realize the error of your ways, understand your place was here, despite your memories of Mave not returning. But they never did." "So you told her I died?" Elijah asks, horror and shame crashing over him in waves. Mave, the woman he loved enough to abandon everything for, believed he was dead. She grieved alone while carrying his child. Yes, the simple admission shatters something inside him. How could you? He screams into the phone, his voice breaking. I'll never forgive you for this. You hear me? Oh, come on, Samuel snaps back. You know the law. She's human. You're not right for her anyway. She's better off without you, and you know it. Like this is about her, Elijah yells, as if you cared for 1 second when you left her to grieve and fend for our child alone. What? Samuel's voice cuts through Elijah's tirade. What are you talking about? You couldn't have even known Faith wouldn't turn out a shifter. What were you planning? To have her kidnapped if she were? Is that why you have Alan tailing her? Elijah scoffs, his horror growing at the thought of Faith turning. Wait a minute, Samuel interrupts. Are you saying the girl was pregnant? Oh, come off it, Dad, as if you didn't know. Elijah snaps, then realizes his father has gone completely silent, and Samuel West is never quiet. You didn't know about Faith? Elijah asks, his voice dropping to a whisper. On the other end of the line, he hears his mother's voice rising in the background, his father speaking to her in hushed, urgent tones. There was a baby, Samuel repeats, his tone blank with shock. Don't you dare try and pretend like you care for 1 second. Listen to me. His mother's voice suddenly fills the line as she takes the phone from Samuel. Alan has been watching Mave for years. We thought we owed her at least protection. Alan offered. Oh, how generous of you, Mother, Elijah snaps back. Shut it, his mother says sharply. I'm trying to tell you that unlike us, Alan has been hanging around Mave for years. He has to know about the baby, she whispers, her voice trembling with horror. She's not a baby anymore, Mother, Elijah retorts, though his mind races as the truth crashes over him like a tidal wave. Alan had kept secrets from everyone. His parents didn't know Mave was alive and grieving, and Elijah had no idea Faith even existed. For years, Alan stood at the center of this web, pulling strings, hiding truths. He's been playing all of us, Elijah murmurs, his voice barely audible. The memory of Alan in the school parking lot flashes through his mind. The terror on his face when he saw Elijah, the way he fled with Faith and Mave, as if running for his life. But why? Diana asks, her voice tinged with confusion. I don't know, Elijah admits, but he saw me today, Mother. He ran. He took my daughter and drove off like his life depended on it. The phone line crackles as silence stretches between them. Finally, Elijah speaks again, his tone resolute. I have to go. I have to find them. Without waiting for a response, he hangs up, his hands trembling as the weight of betrayal settles over him. Alan, his childhood friend, his pack brother, the man he trusted above all others, had orchestrated this tangled mess for 7 years. The question haunting Elijah is simple yet devastating. Why? Alan shifts back into his human form, the wet, organic sounds making Maeve's stomach churn, just as they had the first time she witnessed it. Jesus Christ, she mutters, raking her hands through her hair as Alan reaches for his clothes. Faith was right. Oh my God, my 7-year-old knew before I did. Guilt washes over her as she recalls Faith's insistence that Uncle Alan was a wolf in disguise. How many times had she dismissed her daughter's words with an adult's condescending smile, calling him a liar when he denied it? I'm sorry for not telling you, Alan says, pulling his shirt over his head. We're not supposed to tell humans about what we are. Mave snaps, sharper than intended. Who's we? Alan sits on the edge of her coffee table, facing her. Shifters. There are more of us than you'd think. Families, communities spread across the world. We organize ourselves into packs. Packs, Mave repeats, testing the unfamiliar word. Exactly like wolves, Alan confirms with a nod. Each pack has an alpha who leads, makes decisions for the group, enforces our laws. My alpha, Samuel West, has forbidden me to. Wait, Mave interrupts, her thoughts spiraling. Are you telling me Elijah is like you? He is, Alan replies, something ominous lacing his tone. It makes her stomach twist. That's why I'm risking everything to tell you this secret, Mave. You need to understand the gravity of what he did when he got you pregnant. What? Mave recoils, stunned. It's illegal for werewolves. Shifters, Alan corrects. Fine, shifters. But it's not illegal for shifters to sleep with humans, is it? Not exactly, Alan answers, leaving the unsaid hanging heavily in the air. It's illegal for shifters to have children with humans, particularly human women, because survival during such pregnancies is rare. Mave blinks, absorbing this revelation. The exhaustion she endured, Elijah's constant hovering laced with panic, it all makes sense now. Getting pregnant from Elijah should have killed you, Alan presses on. And even if it hadn't, if Faith had been a shifter, you wouldn't have been allowed to raise her. Excuse me? Mave screeches. A bite from a shifter can kill a human, Alan explains, and the risk of a child biting you is significant. The fragments fall into place with crushing clarity. Elijah's reaction when she told him about the pregnancy wasn't joy, it was horror. His face had gone pale, his insistence that she couldn't keep the baby desperate and unyielding. That lying scumbag, she explodes, fury bubbling over. He lied to me this entire time. He never told me. Exactly, Alan says, his voice sharp with vindication. He started a relationship with you against orders and then got you pregnant. Well, in his defense, it's not entirely his fault, Mave mutters, feeling a flicker of defensiveness despite her anger. I forgot to take my pill once. Okay, maybe twice or 3 times. Alan shakes his head in disbelief. How can you defend him? Do you realize the danger he put you in? The question stings like a slap. Is that why he pretended to be dead all these years? She asks bitterly. Because he committed a crime? No. The low, furious voice comes from behind them. Mave spins around to see Elijah standing in her doorway, his eyes blazing with rage. He came here, she thinks. I've never pretended to be dead, he growls, stepping inside. Something happened to me, an accident. I lost my memory of you and Faith. My father decided it would be better if you thought I was dead, and Alan, he points an accusing finger at him, helped convince you. Meanwhile, neither of you told my father you were pregnant with our child. Mave stares at both men, struggling to process everything. The memory loss, his father's deception, Alan's involvement. The betrayal feels absolute, suffocating, leaving her speechless. But if Elijah truly lost his memory in some kind of accident, then his appearance at the hotel, his confusion at the school, his presence now, it all means something different than she'd assumed. How did you find us? She asks. I tracked you, Elijah replies, shooting Alan a menacing glare. Step away from her. Alan moves protectively in front of Mave, and suddenly both men are shouting. You've been lying to me for 7 years, Elijah roars. Keeping me away from my family? Your family? Alan shouts back. You put her in danger. You were selfish, reckless. You always do what you want without thinking about the consequences. Consequences? Elijah's voice drops to a deadly quiet tone. You want to talk about consequences? You let my daughter grow up without her father. What kind of consequences are those, Alan? I was protecting them, Alan insists, from you, from the danger you represent. How could you not think of the consequences where Mave was concerned? Alan shouts, his face red with fury. Just approach her like this. Take what you want? I would never. Oh, I see how it is, Elijah interrupts, his voice cutting through Alan's tirade like a blade. Meanwhile, you never had the courage to approach her at all, but you wanted to, didn't you, Alan? Alan's mouth snaps shut, his face going pale. You loved her, Elijah concludes, his voice deadly quiet. That's what this is about. You loved her, and unlike me, you didn't approach her. Mave stares at both men, her mind racing. Alan, who's been her rock for years, who held her while she cried? Alan, she says quietly, is this true? Alan looks at her with anguish in his eyes. For a moment, it looks like he's going to deny it. But then, yes, he admits, it's true. I saw you first and I loved you first, but I knew the rules. And most importantly, I would never have done that to you. Is that why you had my memory erased? Elijah demands in this supposed accident. No, Alan screams. You had your own memory erased. Both Mave and Elijah stare at him in stunned silence. What? Mave breathes. Alan looks cornered. You were growing weaker because of the pregnancy, he says, voice full of resentment. Elijah was desperate to save you, but it was too little too late. Mave remembers now the bone-deep exhaustion, sleeping 16 hours a day, Elijah's constant worry that she'd attributed to first-time father nerves. There was nothing we could do, Alan continues. We asked everyone, and eventually Elijah went to see one of the rare humans to ever survive giving birth to a shifter child, a woman named Cassandra Hargrove. She advised him to meet with a magician who has the power to grant any wish but for a price. What kind of price? Mave asks, though she's beginning to suspect she already knows. Alan bites his lip. He and I went to see the magician, a man called Adrian. He granted Elijah's wish to ensure Faith would be human and you would survive the pregnancy. But in doing so, he lost my memories of Mave. Elijah finishes, his voice hollow with understanding. Alan nods. And I asked you, Elijah says slowly, not trusting my father. I asked my good friend Alan to tell me everything and bring me back to Mave, but you didn't. Alan turns to Mave instead of answering Elijah. Because he didn't deserve you. He put you in danger. He almost killed you. I've loved you since the first moment I saw you, Mave. I just wanted what's best for you. The words should be romantic, should make her feel cherished. Instead, they make her feel sick. Then why didn't you make the wish? She asks quietly. Alan recoils. What? You claim to want what's best for me, Mave says, her voice growing stronger. What's best for me is for my daughter to grow up with her father by her side. Surely you know that. Surely, if you love me, you know that's all I ever wanted. Alan goes pale. Why didn't you make the wish? Mave presses. Faith and I would have been fine, and Elijah would have been with us, and you would have lost your memories of me. Maybe not, Alan admits reluctantly. The price is what you love most. Mave smiles grimly. Well then, she says, her voice cutting, if you're not sure that's me, then you can't claim you loved me as much as he did. She points to Elijah. And before Alan can reply, she adds, I don't fault you for not making the wish. You don't have to do that for me. I'm not your wife. I'm not your family. Faith isn't yours, Mave. Alan tries to interrupt weakly. But you could have spared me the grief, she says, her voice breaking. You could have told Elijah the truth. You say you did that out of love, but and you know it. Alan reaches for her, desperation in his eyes, but Elijah throws himself forward, restraining him. Stay away from her, Elijah snarls. Mave meets Alan's eyes, her heart shattered not by his love, but by his betrayal. For 7 years, she's raised their daughter alone, while her father was kept away by the very person she trusted most. She never wants anything more to do with him. 3 months pass like a dream twisted into something Mave can't quite name. Faith, who has spent 7 years clinging to photographs and stories, now has the real thing. A father who looks at her with wonder in his eyes, as if he can't believe something so perfect could exist. "Higher, Daddy, higher," she squeals, her legs pumping as Elijah pushes her on the park swing. "Not too high," Mave calls out. He catches her eye across the playground and immediately adjusts his push. He does that, respects her boundaries, never questions, never challenges. That's the problem, isn't it? He's still him, the man who knows intuitively when she's in a bad mood, who can't cook to save his life but tries anyway. The same man, but with a hold where she used to be. Sometimes she catches him watching her with something that might be interest, probably attraction, but it isn't love. Not the love that made him sacrifice everything. "Mom, did you see how high I went?" Faith calls. "I saw, baby." Later, she insists on showing Elijah her new Hello Kitty notebook, the one he bought her last weekend. She flips through the pages, showing him drawings he's already praised, stories he's already read, as if presenting them for the first time. And Elijah responds with the same enthusiasm, the same focus, as if nothing in the world matters more. A knock at the door distracts Mave. I'll get it. There's no one there when she opens it, just a small envelope on the welcome mat. Her name is written on the front in a familiar handwriting that makes her stomach clench. Alan. She glances back to ensure Elijah and Faith are still engrossed in the notebook before slipping the envelope into her pocket. She can't handle Elijah's protective anger right now, not when she's barely holding herself together. Later, after Faith is asleep and Elijah has finally, reluctantly said goodnight, she opens the envelope with trembling hands. The note inside is brief. "Mave, you were right. I didn't love you the way you deserved. I'll fix everything. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll understand. This letter was always meant for you. I'm sorry I kept it from you for so long, Alan." A second, older envelope falls out, its edges yellowed with age. Her name is written on it in handwriting she would recognize anywhere. Elijah's handwriting. Mave's hands shake so violently she can barely open it. "Freckles. Before you, I was a shadow moving through a world I didn't belong in. I had everything and nothing at once, and none of it mattered until that afternoon when you knelt beside my broken-down car. Grease smudged across your cheek, refusing to tell me your name because rich boys like me were nothing but trouble. You were right about that. Before you, I was half alive. After tonight, I will be again." By now, Alan will have told you everything. What I am, what my family is. I should have told you from the beginning. You deserved the truth before you gave me your heart, before we built the only thing in my life that ever truly mattered. I've spent hours searching for the perfect words, the explanation that would make sense of why I kept this from you. But there are no perfect words. The simple truth is that I was afraid. From the moment I met you, when my world narrowed to the constellation of freckles across your nose, and the way you laughed like you were surprised by your own joy, I knew I would tear down heaven and earth to keep you. I told myself I'd tell you when the time was right. Then I told myself I couldn't risk losing you by revealing what I am. Then it was too late. I knew you'd never forgive the deception. You hate liars, and trust is a currency you don't spend easily. I knew all this, and I still chose fear over honesty. Now you're carrying our child, and it's killing you, Mave. Every day you grow weaker, and there's nothing the doctors can do because they don't understand what's happening. I've searched everywhere for a solution, asked everyone who might know, and found only one answer, one with a price I never imagined having to pay. As I write this, you're sleeping so deeply you won't wake until this is fixed. The magician was brutally clear. Our daughter can be human. You can survive. But the price is what I love most in this world. You. After tonight, I won't remember you. I won't remember how your hair smells like rain, or how you cry at dog food commercials and pretend you don't. I'll forget the sound of your laughter, the feeling of your hand in mine, all of it gone. I would be nothing without these memories, Freckles, but I'm letting them go because a world where you exist, even if you hate me, is better than one where you don't. You may never forgive me for the lies or look at me the same way again, but you'll live, and our daughter will be safe. That has to be enough. I'll find my way back to you, Miss Sullivan, even if I forget your name, your face, the feel of your lips on mine. My soul will recognize yours. If someday you can let me love you again, relearn your heart's shape, rediscover the rhythm of your breath, I'll spend every moment making up for what I've lost. I hope you'll let me, but I'll understand if you can't. Forever yours, even when I don't know it. Elijah. Tears stream down M's face, soaking the paper and smudging the ink. She presses a hand to her mouth, stifling sobs that threaten to break free. Days pass, and the letter burns in Mave's pocket. She can't bring herself to show it to Elijah, can't find the right moment or words. He watches her when he thinks she won't notice, his gaze shifting from curiosity to something deeper, hungrier. Still, she keeps her distance. The casual touches that could lead to more are met with subtle withdrawal. She doesn't think she can start over, doesn't think she could endure losing him again. One night, Faith shows Elijah her newest treasures during dinner. "And this is where I'm going to write all my wolf stories," Faith says, flipping to a blank page. "Because wolves are the best animals, like you, Dad." Elijah smiles warmly. "I'm glad you think so, Princess." His eyes drift across the table, meeting Maeve's, and his smile lingers. Then suddenly his expression freezes, his glass slipping from his fingers. "Dad?" Faith's voice trembles with worry. "Are you okay?" Elijah doesn't respond, staring at Maeve with an intensity that sends chills through her. "What's wrong?" she asks, rising from her chair. She moves around the table, hesitating briefly before touching his arm, the first deliberate contact she's made since his return. He blinks rapidly, focus returning as his eyes lock onto hers. "What is it?" Maeve asks again. He tries to speak, his mouth opening and closing, his gaze never leaving her face. Just as she considers calling a doctor, he whispers, "Freckles." Maeve's breath catches. "What did you just say?" The nickname hangs between them, heavy with meaning. Something shifts in his gaze, igniting recognition in her chest. Maeve shakes her head, afraid to believe it. "Elijah!" He reaches for her, his hand trembling, then hesitates. With careful slowness, he touches a strand of her hair, gently twisting it between his fingers. The gesture feels heartbreakingly familiar, reminiscent of how he used to touch her hair during lazy mornings when they woke up together. "It's not pink anymore," he says, his voice rough with emotion, tears welling up in his eyes. Maeve begins to cry, remembering the pink hair she had when they were together. "What is it? What's happening?" Faith asks, glancing between them in confusion. I like it, Elijah says, still holding the strand of her hair. I always liked your natural color. Guilt and shame flash across his face, and he drops the strand as if it burns him. He opens his mouth, and Mave knows what's coming. She recognizes the look. He's about to apologize. It's the same expression he wore whenever he thought he'd overstepped or hurt her, the same one he had the day she told him she was pregnant. Before he can speak, Mave leans forward and presses her lips to his. The kiss is desperate, 7 years of longing poured into a single moment. His arms wrap around her instantly, pulling her close, holding her as though he'll never let go again. Faith squeals, clapping her hands in delight. When they finally break apart, both are breathing hard, tears streaming down their faces. Mave cups his face in her hands, staring into the eyes that have haunted her dreams for 7 years. She sees the love and recognition shining there and knows, against all odds, he has come back to her. Your father is home, she tells Faith, her gaze locked on Elijah. He's finally home.